Alright guys, it's come to this. The only way to get back all that money from last session, Starry Night slots. Clearly the GTO play. Obviously kidding. Back here at the Wynn, just sat the 2.5 1500 max. Really the way to get that money back from last session is to just stay the course. And the best way that I think to do that is to not dwell on past mistakes. Of course, as I mentioned last time, have to acknowledge them, have to analyze them, have to analyze hands that maybe you don't even think are mistakes. Got to analyze everything. So spend a decent amount of time on those hands. But I was listening to some Gary Vaynerchuk again today, and he said the best way to fail at the next thing is to dwell on the previous mistake. So there would be no dwelling around here. Moving on. I will say that it can be pretty easy to go into the next session after a big loss thinking that you are stuck right off the bat X amount of dollars that you lost in the previous session. I think that's pretty normal, normal way to feel. It's not the correct way to feel, that's for sure. Because you're kind of just you're cherry picking one result out of many, many results and applying that to the next session. If you're gonna do that, why not take the previous 2 results or the previous 5 results and say, I'm actually up this amount of money. So what I like to do when I have a downswing or when I have a big loss is crack open the poker results, look at the spreadsheet, look at the graph, and see how I'm doing over a much longer period of time. So that kind of helps me realize that it's just one blip on the graph. At least as far as the results go, at least as far as that one session goes, it helps me get that bigger picture, clear my mind a little bit. Like I said, we're not trying to just completely forget about things that happened in that previous session because it's all a learning experience, of course, so we want to apply the lessons that we learned. But we're not starting off the session today stuck 3.7K. We're actually up who knows how many thousands of dollars over the course of our cash game poker career. So with all that being said, time to get after it. Alright, just taking a break here. This is the Hand History Lounge. This is the space in the Encore property where we come to discuss hand histories. It's probably a little bit noisy in here today due to Surrender right next door going off this evening. So hopefully you guys can hear me okay, but I'm going to talk about a few hands here real quick. First interesting hand, the under the gun player limps in, and we look down at Jack 9 of diamonds from the hijack position. For sure a playable hand, and in late position, I'm looking to come in for a raise. So I make it 25 to go, the button and the limper call. So 3 ways to a flop of 8-6 deuce with 2 spades and 1 diamond. Under the gun player checks, and I put out a C-bet and make it 55. The button folds and the under the gun player calls. Turn is pretty gin card for us. Turn is a 7 of diamonds. The under the gun player only has somewhere around 250, maybe a little less actually, maybe 230. We pick up a ton of equity here on the turn. We don't block spades, so that's one hand type that seems reasonable and that our opponents could fold here. So having no showdown value and having pretty good equity, hopefully some fold equity, decide to jam all in. My opponent goes into the tank, thinking it over, and then he makes the call. So we're looking for some help here on the river, and unfortunately it does not come. We do make a pair, but it's not good enough. My opponent rolls over pocket 10s right away for the rivered straight. Pair of 9's not gonna do it. I think my line is okay. Certainly some merit to checking back on the turn and just realizing equity, but I think it's okay. But unfortunately, off to semi-rough start here in the session. All right, I think the Hand History Lounge. I think the Hand History Lounge might be a little bit noisy tonight, so let's go take a walk. Maybe we can find a quieter place to discuss some hands. Back to the roof, all-purpose roof. All right, gotta do this in the car because as much as you know I like the scenery from the rooftop of a good parking garage, it's windy today. And you know the Canon G7X does not hold up too well in the wind. So next hand comes when I raise pocket fours to 20 from under the gun +1, 3 callers. So we're going 4 ways to a flop. Flop is pretty favorable, I'd say. Flop is Jack 8-4, the old bottom set. Pretty wet flop, lots of draws out there. So I try to size it a little bit bigger, and I bet $60. Folds to the button who flat calls. Button is the same player who got us on the previous hand with the pocket 10s. So building a little bit of history here. Turn is the ace of spades, so presents a backdoor flush draw. This time I bet $140. The button thinks for a little bit and calls again. The river completes the backdoor flush draw, deuce of spades, but I don't think it's reason enough to stop betting. I don't think it's reason enough to be too cautious. I feel like there's still some value to be had here. I think we can possibly get looked up by an ace-queen, ace-king of clubs type hand, ace-jack perhaps. I think there's still some value to be had here. So I go ahead and put on a bet, and I bet $270. Obviously, if my opponent decides to raise, it's going to be a pretty gross situation, and not too sure what I'm going to do there. I might have to find a fold, which would kind of suck to have to bet fold a set, which is a pretty strong hand. It sucks to have to bet fold a set, but hopefully it doesn't come to that, and my opponent is in the tank thinking about what to do. He starts talking to himself, which is usually a good sign. When an opponent starts talking to himself and starts verbalizing different hands, etc., it seems like they are not considering a raise, considering whether to call or fold. So my opponent is thinking, and eventually he decides on a call. We show the fours and we're good. So that hand worked out pretty well. Pretty happy with my line, and my I guess my sizings in that hand worked out okay. Normally when an opponent tank calls versus snap call, it seems like we maxed out the value there. So that hand worked out. All right, I'm gonna try and set the camera down here so we can get a nice steady cam for the last hand before I head back in there. Last hand of note, I open up ace king from under the gun, somehow misclick it to $15 instead of my standard $20 open. How do you misclick in live poker? Don't ask me, but it happens. We get no less than 4 callers, so we go 5 ways to a flop. Flop is ace 9 deuce rainbow. Super dry flop, but we flop pretty good here. The blinds check to us, and with the flop being so dry, I decided to size pretty small here. I bet $30. The under the gun +2 player and the small blind both call. 3 ways to a turn. Turn is the 3 of spades and brings a backdoor flush draw. The small blind checks, and this time it's sized a little bit bigger relative to the pot, and I bet $90. The under the gun +1 ships his stack in there. Small blind folds. The bet size is not that big, $230 or so, if that. Small blind folds, and not too much choice here. Not much choice at all. If he has us, he has us. Obviously never folding for that much more. So I call. River breaks out, offsuit 7. My opponent shows 4-3 offsuit. We win the pot. All right, heading back in, back to the grind, up a couple $100 and getting back after it. Game seems pretty good. Got stuck right off the bat, was stuck somewhere around $400 or $500 off the bat thanks to that Jack 9 hand, but up a couple $100 now, back to work.
You have a good night.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Wrapping up the session. A couple more hands to go over. Head back to the car here. It's still windy outside. It's either loud inside or it's windy outside. Doesn't make for too many easy places to do hand reviews. I don't know if sitting in the car is the most exciting place to be talking about poker hands. What can you do? I don't know if you guys care either way. You guys just want the info, right? Just want the details. All right, so in this hand, I open up pocket kings from under the gun. 20 to go. The next player to act calls, folds all the way around to the big blind, who puts in a 3-bet, and he makes it $80 to go. He wasn't the tightest player at the table, and we have the second best hand ever created, so I'm gonna put in a 4-bet here. I decided to make it 190 to go. I want to make it a sizing where I don't fold out all of his worst hands, and I'm looking to get some action here. I'm in position against this player, happy to play a pot here, so I don't want to fold him out, and I want to make it a sizing where he has to continue. The next player folds, and the big blind makes the call. So we go heads up to a flop here. Flop is not really that favorable. Flop is ace 9-8 with 2 clubs. Ace finds its way out to the flop. The big blind checks, and in position here with less than top pair, I decide to check back. Turn is a 9 of clubs, so we do pick up the nut flush draw. The big blind leads out on this turn card. He bets $240. Not really too much option here. Not looking to raise, not looking to fold. That only leaves one option. I put in the call, and we're off to a river card. River's a 7 of clubs, so we end up making the nut flush. It's a paired board, so obviously we don't have the nuts, but pretty good hand here. This time the big blind checks. Obviously gonna go for some value here. I put out a bet of $540. I think maybe I could size here a little bit smaller. There's some possibility that he turned a flush and just let out, or there's also the other possibility, which is probably more likely, that he has some sort of an ace-X hand. Would be ideal if he had the queen of clubs to go along with that ace-X hand, but many other possibilities. I think sizing a little bit smaller to kind of ensure a call might be better. I don't know. I bet 540. He doesn't think that long, and he lets it go. So no more value there on the river, but happy to take it down after a rather unfavorable flop. So in this hand, the under the gun player opens for 20. Happens to be the same player who we just battled in the previous hand. He has switched seats, and we look down at pocket aces. Put in the 3-bet, we're in the hijack. We make it $65 to go. Folds back to the initial raiser who calls. Flop, pretty favorable, I'd say. Flop is ace 10-8, 2 hearts. So we flop top set on a pretty wet board, actually. Under the gun player checks, and sometimes I will certainly look to check back a flop that we have absolutely crushed, such as top set. Blocks a lot of their calling range, but with the board being this wet, flush draws, many straight draws available, potentially some top pairs, some top pair hands as well. This time I decide to c-bet, make it $85. Interesting news from the initial raiser, he puts out a check raise. He makes it $240. Once again, it's one of those spots where I actually don't think there's too many options. I think flat call here is pretty much always best. It depends on the player. It could be a little bit player dependent, and I know there's people out there that will advocate for a 3-bet, but I don't know. For me, it's just always a call here. So if you have other opinions, feel free to share, but I decide to flat call. Turn is another 8, so top boat for us. Pretty good card, I would say. Not only that, but the under the gun player continues betting. He bets $330 this time. Pretty similar situation. I think we have about $800 effective behind. I think that's about how much my opponent has, and we cover him, so somewhere around 800 behind. We obviously are not worried about any cards on the river, but there could be some cards that come on the river that could kill some action. So of course there's always merit to some other options here, but calling here to me just seems best. So I flat call. River is a total brick. River is an offsuit 3. This time he checks. Little disappointing, because if he was bluffing, that means he has shut down with his bluffs. If he's not bluffing, if he wasn't bluffing, if he somehow had ace 10 or pocket 10s and is trying to induce a bluff, obviously we can still try and go for the max here. So I just decided to jam all in with what little money is behind compared to the pot size. Seems like a jam is reasonable. You could also make a case for betting a little bit less than the jam, just so it's not the verbal declaration of all in. I decided to go for the max, jam all in there. My opponent thinks for a while, eventually decides on a fold, unfortunately. So we don't get the last value bet. Certainly some merit to sizing smaller. Decided to go for the max and didn't work out this time, but scoop a decent one, scoop a decent sized pot there. I feel like this segment should be called something. You know how we have mail on the couch? This segment should be like hands from the front seat of the car, hands from the VW Jetta, hands from the Jetta hands. So anyway, there's an early position open for $20. I call with king queen offsuit on the button, and the big blind calls as well. 3 ways to a flop here. Flop is ace 5-3 with 2 hearts. Big blind checks, initial raiser checks. Don't see too much reason to bet here, so I check back. Turn is an offsuit king. That means we made a pair. The big blind leads out on this card and he bets $30. Initial raiser folds. Could be a little bit too tight to just fold right away. Interesting spot though, because I think the big blind is, I think this player is a pretty good player. Younger. I don't think he's going to be the type to just give up on the river. So on some brick river cards, we're definitely going to have to consider calling that street as well. If he happens to have some sort of a draw, I suspect he's probably going to continue on all brick rivers. We're going to have to see what happens here. I feel like it's a little bit too tight to fold, so I go ahead and call. River is sort of a brick. River is an offsuit jack, so queen 10 gets there. If he happen to have if he happened to have a hand like queen 10 of hearts, that gets there. King jack also gets there, is now beating us, but not sure if king jack should be a bet there on the turn. This time the big blind leads out for $80. Pretty interesting spot here. We block ace king, but that's a little bit irrelevant. Pretty sure he would 3-bet that. We block king jack, so that's good. We don't block any flush draws, so that's good too, I think, and definitely relevant. We don't block any sets, we don't block aces up, so we don't block a hand like ace 5 and ace 3. And if he somehow happens to have deuce 4, we don't block that either. So there's some possibilities there that we are losing to. There's also lots and lots of draws out there. There's lots of flush draws, obviously, that we don't block. Lots of gut shots and things of that nature that we don't block either. So I think it's pretty close. I think it's a pretty close situation, considering that we don't block any flush draws. He has all of those in his range, and some other straight draws, potentially. All right, so anyway, results. I call, and he has 8-6 offsuit. All right, so we scoop that one as well. We win that pot. Session is going rather favorably. Session went rather favorably, I should say. Session went about as good as I could have asked for. As soon as we turned the corner after that very first hand, things just went our way. Things turned around, and from there we were just cruising. Ended up booking a win of $2,131. Obviously we don't erase the previous loss, but that was never gonna happen. I've never won $3,700 in a 2-5 game, so no expectations of that sort of thing, but as much back on track as we possibly could have asked for. Am I going to give up on the 5-10 games? No, I'm not gonna give up on the 5-10 games. I'm gonna still battle. I'm gonna get back there. I'm gonna get back in there. I'm still gonna battle. 2-5 here at the Wynn. Definitely, definitely worth spending some time in. It's the same max buy-in as the 5-10 game at the Bellagio, and get a decent number of people straddling in the 2-5 here. For sure, worth spending a decent number of hours here. So I'm not sure where I'll spend the majority of my time, but I'm looking to push myself and not just get comfortable in the 2.5. You obviously want to spend the most time in whatever game is, whichever one is more profitable. I'm just not one to rest on my laurels. Is that a saying? I think that's the saying, rest on my laurels. I'm just gonna keep battling, keep moving on. We're gonna keep trudging on, keep fighting the good fight, keep recording, keep vlogging, keep editing, keep working out, keep reviewing hands and shit.